So we're moving on to our next speaker, Professor Vladimir Krasnov. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Krasnov. Professor Krasnov is an accomplished scholar in the field of pedagogy and medicine with a PhD in pedagogics and a Doctor of Medical Science. He's served as assistant professor, full professor, and is now an academic of the Higher Education Academy of Sciences in the Ukraine. Since 2016, Professor Krasnov has been the head of the pedagogy, psychology, medical, and pharmaceutical law department, and he supervised a number of important research projects. These include the initiative devoted to the formation of key professors and general humanitarian competencies of a doctor, which has explored the pedagogical, psychological, and legal aspects of medical education. Professor Krasnov's research interests span a broad range of topics, including the application of informational technologies in medicine and education, knowledge transition and control principles, didactics, pedagogical psychology, distance education, and ontology of knowledge. We're honored to have him with us today to share his insights and expertise with all of you. The title of his presentation is Education and Social Consciousness. What kind of society are we building? And so I'll pass it on now to Professor Krasnov.
Да. Дорогие коллеги, дорогие участники.
Dear participants of the conference, thank you for the introduction. I would like to offer this topic of my presentation. It was announced. You can see my presentation. The topic is education and social consciousness. And I would like, together with you, to go deeper into the topic, why the answer to this question is very important to us. And I would like to start with the public consciousness and why that is important. Because the public consciousness, it's all our human qualities that reflect the surrounding world, and not just reflect it. It forms the environment around us according to the states and characteristics that we have. There's Emil Durkheim talked about various consciousness, levels of consciousness. It starts with the public consciousness, and through the public consciousness, each individual perceives the surrounding world. And now we talk about the social being and social consciousness. Our life, the social and economical life, is our being. We can change our environment and the consciousness will change. And nevertheless, the progressive ideas could change our consciousness and life around us. But also public consciousness could be behind our social being. For example, when socialism left some of the countries, nevertheless, some of the people there still live with those social ideas that were adopted by those countries. and they attract to one another in the law of equivalence. That attraction is the condition of the life of society and a basis for their spiritual consciousness. And there's a voice of public opinion forms their consciousness, and it amplifies the ties of the individual with the society. And a small part of the society, they also strive to wholeness and cohesiveness of the society, and they develop a new consciousness. Social consciousness creates a moral social environment and force people to accept new ways of acting and thinking. That's why the social consciousness is very important, because it defines the human's decisions. So the sense of lack of norm and anomaly in society, what is this? Anomaly in society is in the sense of transition and crisis, when old norms and values cease to operate and the new ones have not yet been established. And the new society starts to approve false ideas and false way of developing. And it's even considered as criminal. And then there's a new generation of new elements of public consciousness. Society is the ones that, if the society doesn't want to change, and then the society develops, and it brings to the division and specializations of labor. And as a result of that labor, the various forms, professional groups formed, and they continue to serve new ideas. Those new structures, they start develop their new norms and rules of behavior, and they start to approach them consciously. And between individual and public consciousness, we see that the group consciousness enters it. Public consciousness starts to go more on the background of individual consciousness, according to his defined activity. So the system of norms and rules start to get weaker, and it leads to misunderstanding and miscoordination of the groups. Then Durkheim's offered these theories. Those special groups, they could be transformed into some agents of influence on the society, that not that advocate for the interests of individuals, but this social group, because the society is kind of like moved on the background and in balance, this social group has to develop norms and rules for the whole society. But mechanism of the establishing of those norms, they start influence consciousness of people. In other words, those elements of social consciousness as moral sense, social control, sanction systems,
Они должны куда-то
as the structure starts to break down, all those qualities need to move somewhere. So those characteristics start embody new life and new ideas. So it specifically individual has to step ahead and expand not only the individual consciousness, but also influence consciousness of the society. And so this is transitional conclusion. The leader creates a group, and that leader has a stable consciousness. It's more sustainable and more established group. That group could serve as an agent of changes in public consciousness. And if that group has advanced ideas, so the society starts to adapt all those ideas as very attractive. Now let's talk about the problems of the contemporary world. In the 90s, there was a concept of VUCA was born. That society is characterized by certain problems, lack of orienteers, lack of guidance. And in that society, we need to live and make decisions. So the state of that imbalanced society influences everybody who live in it. So we understand that single streams in society cannot solve the problem of the whole society. So there was 4 integral social parts: the social humanitarian technologies, nanos, cognitive, bio, and intra. So it was added, social humanitarian technologies were added to that. The idea was not to find new ideas in development of the society, but to solve the problems that arise today. So we're talking about reaction strategy. In turn, how the world reacts to that. So the experts in that area, they don't just sit and wait for the solution. They start the Paris Agreement on climate change in the World Health Organization, Global Health Strategy, and UNESCO. They have the Education 2030 Agenda, Education for Sustainable Development Strategy. I think it's good. And also in Chan Declaration, there were 17 fundamental goals for humanity that have been identified, and about quality, equality, tolerance. There were measurable indications related to access to education and to help developing countries, help the humanity that's try to catch up. And I like this global citizenship. is understanding ourselves as part of the global community and recognizing our shared responsibility to take joint actions to address global challenges. Nevertheless, in all those ideas, I didn't find the future. All those strategies that are offered, they're aimed as a reaction to existing problems, the global challenges, poverty, global warming, human rights, and so forth. Strategies of UNESCO in 2017, they again remind me of reactions to the existing problems, sustainable economic growth, environmental problem protection, and development of social sphere. UN from 1990, constantly measuring the standard of living, and also reaction to existing problems, life expectancy, level of education. This is another transitional conclusion. The whole world is at loss, VUCA. All the development strategies are reactive and aimed at meeting public needs. So all those strategies, they're aimed on the past or current states, but the world needs future strategies. Well, we talked about that the world desperately needs ideas for the future. And this is how we approach this slide. There's new technologies come to our life all the time. Like, for example, AI, artificial intelligence. Is it good? Yes, it's wonderful. It's help to the humanity. But we read in the recent news that Italy actually abandoned that. Why? Because people start misusing this wonderful tool. Because people are not corrected. So the question arises, how to educate a person that could use any tool in their hand without any fear that the person would use that instrument to harm the world. So we see that any external limitations would not change that. The person needs to have internal structure and rules and understand how to use everything correctly. So what's the global citizenship? But I think there's a huge problem here. Humanity doesn't have an answer to the question where the world's going, what the society would look like in the future. So I think it depends on us how accurately we depict that image, that global citizenship. We need not only not to interfere with one another, but to achieve conscious ideas. So the system education, public consciousness, that all will depict as the future. For example, education forms important ideas in a human being. But when the individual is merged into the society, all that was formed in the individual starts to melt and disappears gradually. So another idea, let's isolate that system of education along with its products. But this way, we remove individual from the society. So we see that main line here, and including Ivry, we need to create integral system of education. When the person continues to live in society, but the new ideas that form an individual are not suppressed by that society. So I think we could achieve that goal. We have description of that society of the future with all its characteristics, where we could diminish influence of the society on the individual and the form established stable view world, conscious view world of that in that individual that will want to build a new society. So this is a kind of a small commercial. This is kind of an example. It's not an ideal, of course, but nevertheless, it's useful. In the frame of the Ivry Institute, we develop model of the society of the future on the basis of laws of sociology and the works of scientists Levi Ashlag, Solam, the model of the future. We search, we brainstorm, and this is part of an online webinar. We don't claim that this is just the only right ideas and unique ideas, but we invite everybody to discuss all those ideas. And we need more of those little islands of development and brainstorming.
Запросил у той же самой системы искусственного интеллекта чат-GPT.
Вот, so ChatGPT, I looked at the concepts there.
Которые сейчас работают над тем, чтобы определить и
there are existing concepts in the world that reflect the concepts of the future.
Здесь я перешел к заключительному слайду. Я слежу за временем. Чуть-чуть, я извиняюсь, уже чуть-чуть превысил. Итак, если нам удастся достаточно точно определить цели общества будущего, то эти цели станут целью для системы образования и станут смыслом для личности. Оберегать сформированные характеристики в себе, компетентности, чтобы эти характеристики не были поглощены и размыты окружающим общественным сознанием. Таким образом, мы получаем личности с проактивным мировоззрением. И по гипотезе Эмиля Дюркгейм, подобные личности, они могут сформировать группу с устойчивым мировоззрением. И эта группа станет агентом перемен и в обществе, которое при этом потеряло ориентиры, то самое ВУКА. И эта группа может превратиться в общество с опережающим общественным сознанием, так называемым обществом будущего. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you, everybody, for attention.
Professor Krasnov, for this insightful presentation. Let's check in with Ernest to see if we have any questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, okay. Thank you very much, Professor Krasnov, and thank you, everybody. I just had a look if we had any questions. At the moment, I couldn't see something on our spreadsheet, but I would like to ask a question, Professor Krasnov, with your permission. If I understood correctly from your presentation, okay, is we understand mostly that the world is dealing with the past and with the present, with the current situation what we have, and we are not investing enough time and efforts towards the future, if I understood correctly. My question will be, is it the methodology of the round tables or something that brings the people closer and start actually a sort of a dialogue between different opinions, different levels, different associations, start to build something that will commonly share a common goal that will be the benefit for the whole world? Or at least we can start with a micro model, develop for a bigger model, and bring it to a global model. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Да, доктор Эрнест, большое спасибо за
Yes,
вопрос.
Dr. Ernest, thank you very much for your question.
По сути, мы и из психологии знаем,
From the sociology and psychology, we know
совпадают интересы,
that when people have concurrent interests,
является фактором объединения.
it already
И мы вокруг
serves as a basis
видим огромное
for their
количество
communication and connection.
интересов.
So we see groups that are combined according to their interests.
Я здесь в своем докладе
In my presentation,
основную цель, которую хотел донести,
the main ideas that I want to convey,
вот эти 22 минуты,
all those 22 minutes,
превысил,
maybe I exceeded a little bit my time, I'm sorry about it.
чтобы донести важность,
It's all
что это очень важно.
to convey the importance
В мире все больше и больше появлялось групп,
for the world
которые
to have more and more groups.
пробовать определить
Goals of who
мира,
would be to define the characteristics of the world that we want to live in.
и чем точнее эти характеристики будут
And
являться
the more precise those characteristics are defined,
теми целями, которыми мы
the more clear
объяснять.
goals we will have that we could explain to everybody.
Предлагаем формировать те или
So in the system of education, we offer people
говорим о формировании
the ideas
компетентности.
that would form the integral competence.
Важно, как характеристика.
It's important,
Вопрос, а для чего?
but now we have a question why. Why do we need that system of uniting people? Why do we need integration? Why do we need integral education?
Группу или общество
So we would
тем целям,
lead the group, the society,
определены.
to the goals
Просто
that need to be defined.
это не цель, это инструмент. Это я так
So the unity of the society is not a goal in its own, it's only an instrument to achieve a certain goal.
этот вопрос, а кто может
So the
предложить,
question arises,
куда мы идем?
but who can offer a goal, where we're going?
Вот эти вот, ну, знаете, как такие лаборатории, как один из
It's
примеров,
like the labs that I demonstrated in my presentation,
огромное количество
that
крупных профессиональных
currently there are a lot of groups in existence that have that goal in front of them
как должно выглядеть,
to define the future society, where we're going,
куда мы хотим привести,
and where we would like to come and lead the whole humanity to.
я бы так ответил.
So I think this is my question. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Krasnov. I see that Mr. Alexander Averbach, okay, is willing to ask a question. Please.
Да, во-первых, спасибо большое за
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. The idea is understandable, and it was all formulated very clear and understandable. The system of education that exists today It's aimed on the school age children and youth. So in all good conditions, it will take probably decades for the people to achieve all those ideas. But those ideas we can internalize only if we have some kind of united system of education, including adults. So let's imagine that we have that and everybody accepted it. But how do we build it on the scale of civilized society? Thank you.
Да, доктор Александров, большое.
Yes, Dr. Aberbach, thank you so much for your question. Maybe I'll try to answer it this way. It'd be my pleasure to pull some kind of ready-made instruction and the concept and let everybody know, please write it down, step number 1, step number 2. And unfortunately, I don't have that instruction, but I know that we desperately need it. And I know it's also in the mainframe of our institute. We need to try and offer that instruction. What it would look like, what was it about? And I completely agree that we should not limit ourselves only by children and youth. Of course, we give them certain lines how to achieve that, but the current consciousness of the society and everything that our system of education try to build there, it all breaks down now. So this problem is very evident and looming. So how do we help to form new ideas? How do we help all those ideas to take roots and not to destroyed by the society? This is what we're talking about, the evidence of this problem. I'm not saying this is something new. Well, my task was to emphasize this problem and to show how necessary the work in that direction is. So, Dr. Alexander, I understand that I did not fully answer your question. Well, thank you, I understand. One small question, if I may. Maybe I missed that, but I think there are organizations that work on those problems currently. So in the crisis that we had last year, we saw that it was coming, but it put our civilization on the brink of this total destruction. So what's our directions towards avoiding those crises? How to solve those problems? So how do we do that? How do we work with it? Thank you for the question. I would say this. We all saw how all those organizations reacted on the problems, and we all saw that they were all in chaos and not understanding how to deal with that, and all those decisions that were taken and then canceled. I cannot say how each of those organizations will work on it. This is a huge topic. I only looked at the list of organizations that in general try to work with the concepts for solving those problems and the direction of the society of the future. I'm sure that if those organizations offered some kind of good ideas, they will be translated, broadcasted through the social media, and we would see those decisions only the after fact. That we see that organization would say, look, before the crisis, we saw it would be this and this, and we forecasted everything, and it all came to life, it all happened. On basis of that, we could assume that the instrument of that organization is a working instrument, and we could use that. But the fact, and I'm not saying that I looked everywhere, but the fact that we didn't see that from those organizations, those confirmations, that testifies on its own that they didn't offer anything that would help. So this is my, it's my words, but it's a topic for a separate research that it's huge. Thank you so much for your answer.
I'm going to jump in because we do need to move on, but thank you so much for those insights, Professor. And thank you to our participants for all of the great questions. I see that there are several more questions, but we do need to move on to honor the time of our other guests.